Ok. Quelle question encore? Lana. Did you register? Because we're only online. Did you? Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody's coming in. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Okay. So we're going to start. So, bonsoir à toutes et à tous. Je suis Stéphane Béguet, l'agent de liaison communautaire et d'opération de votre député fédéral Mona Fortier. Merci à l'association communautaire de Manor Park et au conseil communautaire de Manor Park de nous accueillir parmi ses résidentes et résidents pour cette assemblée publique virtuelle, également en direct sur Facebook. Good evening, everyone. I am Stéphane Béguet, the Outreach Officer and Operations for your Federal Member of Parliament, Mona Fortier. Thank you to Manor Park Community Association and to Manor Park Community Council and its residents for having us tonight for this virtual town hall, also live on Facebook. Par défaut, afin de garantir la meilleure qualité sonore pour l'ensemble des participants, tous les micros seront fermés, sauf pour la personne ayant la parole. Pour les participants de la conférence Zoom, lors des questions en direct, vous pourrez lever la main avec l'icône à la droite de votre écran et nous vous donnerons la parole. By default, to offer the best sound quality to all participants, every microphone will be muted except for the person who speaks. For the participants of the Zoom conference, during live questions, you will be able to raise your hand with the icon on the right of your screen, and we will turn your microphone on. Pour commencer cette soirée, je donne maintenant la parole à Elizabeth McAllister, présidente de l'association communautaire de Manor Park, et à Alison Seymour, présidente de la conseil communautaire de Manor Park. Elles seront suivies des élus d'Ottawa-Vanier, Mona Fortier, députée fédérale, Lucille Collard, députée provinciale, et enfin Russell King, conseiller municipal pour Rideau Rockcliffe. To start our evening, I will introduce you to Elizabeth McAllister, President of Manor Park Community Association, and Alison Seymour, President of Manor Park Community Council. And they will be followed by the elected officials, Mona Fortier, Member of Parliament, Lucille Collard, Member of the Provincial Legislature, and Russell King, City Councillor for Rideau Rockcliffe. Je vous souhaite une excellente assemblée publique. I wish you a good town hall. So, Nathalie, c'est à vous. You can take control. Everybody.
Hi, everyone. Bonsoir. Just wanted to say a few words in French first, and then I'll come back to English. We have a list of questions tonight that were collected through your application to come to the Zoom meeting tonight. And also we're going to be taking questions on the chat bar after we go through the questions that we collected first. Don't hesitate to ask a question either in French or in English. And if you know who you'd like to direct the question to specifically, please note that in the chat bar. And we will try and get all our representatives to be as succinct as possible and not to repeat what somebody else has said so that we can get through the most amount of questions possible. Alors, merci tout le monde d'être venu ce soir et de prendre intérêt dans votre communauté. On va premièrement commencer avec les questions qui ont été déjà récoltées lors de l'inscription à la réunion. Et après ça, vous avez l'opportunité d'écrire des questions dans la boîte chat et nous allons les récolter et les poser à tout le monde ce soir aussi. Alors, on demande aux représentants de nous répondre assez rapidement et de ne pas se répéter pour être capable de répondre au plus de questions possibles. So I'd like to first introduce now Elizabeth McAllister, who is the president of the Manor Park Community Association. Elizabeth?
Where is she?
I think she's having trouble entering the Zoom room.
Let me check.
It's Diana. I've just been in touch with, and she was waiting. She's been in the waiting room, so she is having some difficulty logging on, but she is trying to get on. Natalie.
I don't see her.
Okay. So shall we, you don't see her in the waiting room?
No, not yet.
Maybe
Okay,
Stefan, if you want to send her the link again, because I think we all had to re-register with
I
that
sent it
link.
again.
so just in the interest of time then perhaps let's start with Alison Seymour, who is the chair of the Manor Park Community Council.
Merci, Natalie. Good evening and bonsoir, everyone. So by way of brief introduction, for those who are not familiar with the MPCC, we are a trusted provider of licensed childcare, recreational programs, and community events. You may be familiar with some of our programs, such as the after-school childcare that we provide at Manor Park School, arts and fitness classes at the community center, sports on the fields, and skating on the outdoor rink, as well as signature events like Rock the Block. Our work is very diverse, just like the community we serve. And diversity is also reflected in our staff, as well as the over 100 volunteers that we have assisting us in running our programs every year. As a not-for-profit, the MPCC is largely self-funded through things like government grants. And we're also very thankful for the business support that we get from the community businesses in terms of sponsorship for our programs and donations from residents for our opportunity fund to help those that might need some financial assistance to participate in programs. We were thriving and growing when the pandemic hit, and unfortunately had to stop all of our programming as well as lay off our part-time staff in response to the crisis. At the same time, the full-time team did respond and pivot in order to address some of the needs in the community. And in cooperation with our partners, the MPCA launched ottawacares.ca, which is essentially a resource to match volunteers and those that are in need, primarily around food insecurity and work with the food bank. The crisis will continue to have a long-term impact on our programs and how we meet the needs of the community. But we do hope that we'll be able to continue serving the community for many years forward. And I would take this opportunity just to thank everybody for your continued support. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Alison. And now we'll go to Elizabeth McAllister, the president of the Manor Park Community Association.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much to Mona, Lucille, and Ralston for working together to bring us to a town hall tonight. We're very happy to host you. I'd just like to tell our community what Manor Park Community Association does. I missed, sorry, Alison, I missed your intro, but essentially we have a mission, which is that our role is to create an engaged, caring, and sustainable community. And we do that by giving you voice. Our purpose is to create this inclusive and safe belonging where everybody is safe community, where we all feel that we belong. There are 8,000 of us in Manor Park. We're bigger than most people think we are. Manor Park Community Association is essentially your advocate to work on the pressing issues that face us. We have 5 committees that are quite active. We have our Transportation and Safety Committee, which is chaired by John Forsey of MPCA. And it's working on issues of transit, transportation, for example, the river crossing that is planned in the near future, and works very closely with our community police officers to ensure that we get the right coverage in our community. We also have our community outreach group, which is chaired by Mary Hickman, and Mary's been very active in COVID as well, working with MPCC, and we've gotten over 1,000 meals to people within our community. And working with Eugenie Waters and her group, we've gotten several hundred masks to Ottawa community housing in our neighborhood. So it's a very active committee. We also have Eugenie Waters, who's head of our environment committee, and we're just welcoming Eugenie over the last few months, and you'll be hearing a lot from her in the future on issues of sustainability, which I know is very important to all of you. And we have as well the development committee headed by chaired by Tommy Bear. We have many issues coming forward. As you may know, the city's very active, in particular on boundary extension, boundary redefinition, rezoning for densification, which will have a major impact on all of us. And we deal with developers who have plans for our neighborhood. And finally, we have Natalie, who's working on funding and membership. So we invite all of you to join us, get engaged. We welcome you on our committees, and those of you who would like to send us a CV to be on the board. These are times of turmoil, and we need all the horsepower we can get. So thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And now we'll go to Mona Fortier to introduce herself to us.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to start by recognizing that we are all seated on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, and recognize the Algonquin peoples tonight. And also, I want to thank you, Elizabeth and Allison, for hosting us tonight and making this possible. C'est la première fois qu'on vit ce type de réalité sans précédent. Et je pense que la communauté a été très forte depuis le début, mais on sait que ça n'a pas été facile. On sait que la COVID vient mettre encore plus de pression sur nos communautés. Et je veux quand même reconnaître que depuis le début, since the beginning, we have decided, the elected officials, to work together. We believe that working together is the best way to be able to serve our constituents. And I do want to mention by the start that Ralston, Tim Tierney, Mathieu Fleury, Lucille, and I have been meeting since day one to make sure that we address the realities that we're having in our communities. And this is one of the reasons why we're having these public assemblies. And this is our fourth, and there's 4 more to go to make sure that we cover Ottawa-Vanier. And I really want to thank them for working together. And, you know, with the COVID, it's been hard for many, and the federal government has stepped up and offered an economic response that I believe is unprecedented, and hoping that we are trying to support Canadians, workers, businesses, nonprofit organizations, people living with vulnerabilities. Alors, nous faisons vraiment un effort pour pouvoir soutenir les gens pendant cette terrible pandémie. We still have work to do, and that's why I really appreciate having not only questions tonight, but hopefully conversation on hearing what you believe we should be working on to make sure that we provide support, but also we get through this together. Alors, I also want to thank my team who has been, we've changed the team a lot lately, so you'll see new faces, and we're really trying to provide as soon as possible answers or support for constituents. So please don't hesitate. Maybe you can't come physically to the office, but we are open by email and by phone. So I don't want to take too much time because I want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. Mais encore une fois, nous sommes là pour vous servir. Je suis là pour vous servir. Et merci d'être là ce soir.
Merci beaucoup, Mona. Et puis maintenant, j'aimerais appeler Lucille à nous adresser, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup. Oops.
You're good.
Yeah, okay, merci beaucoup, Nathalie. Puis, it's interesting to recognize some people also that are there. It's a very great opportunity to get together, even if it's in a special manner. I think that's the way we have to do it right now until we can actually meet in person, which will be, of course, a lot more interesting. Most of you should know that I was just elected just before the crisis. So I jump into this and try to figure out my way through the best ways of doing things. And I don't want to repeat what Mona said, but the collaboration of all the different elected officials has been really key in really understanding the reality and getting really important feedback for us to represent you in our various levels of government. So, de mon côté, bien sûr, je suis pas dans le gouvernement. Donc, moi, je fais beaucoup de représentation auprès du gouvernement Ford. C'est important qu'ils sachent ce qu'il se passe dans nos communautés. C'est important qu'ils sachent qu'est-ce qu'il a besoin de faire pour adresser ces besoins-là. And that's why I'm conducting like not a citywide, but a riding-wide survey, and Jacques from my office will share that link with you. So it's kind of a survey, just a few quick questions asking really, what did you have to deal with during the crisis? What are you still dealing with? How is it that, you're looking at the future going forward? What do you need in terms of support? And that will inform, my intervention with the government in order to make specific requests and recommendations to the government. So I want just to take a last minute just to say that I do appreciate and understand how important the work that your association does. I think it's tremendous that you're helping bringing people together, the community together, and that you're helping them. So, I think we can all be partner in that. And I certainly look forward to your questions because they will inform me of what really matters to you. So, merci beaucoup, Nathalie. Puis...
Merci, Lucille. Last but not least, our municipal councillor, Ralston King.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for inviting us. It's amazing to think that nearly 100 days ago, the city started to respond to this crisis, closing public facilities, suspending non-essential services, activities and programs, and declaring a state of emergency. These decisions were made at the advice of Ottawa Public Health, our very important health agency, and based on provincial orders. While some services geared down, city staff redeployed resources to support our community's critical needs. We expanded online and remote services to continue servicing our residents, while much of our administrative staff worked at home. It's also important to remember that none of the essential services that are key to the city stopped. So we still had garbage services, transit services, transportation services, despite this unprecedented crisis. In accord with the province's stage 2 economic reopening, the city is now cautiously reopening and resuming some programs and services, with safety being the top priority. The phased reopening plan prioritizes programs and services that promote a safe and strategic expansion of Ottawa's economy, with ongoing support for Ottawa's vulnerable communities. It also focuses on the ability to be flexible based on health advice and a potentially changing environment, which means that and I think all levels of government agree here, if we start going backwards, then we have to respond as governments in the strongest possible terms to ensure that we really address this crisis. But since the arrival of COVID-19 since March, residents have done an incredible job of following public health guidelines. I think that's why we're here at this stage right now. And thanks to the hard work and sacrifices of our community, including frontline workers in our hospitals and all the other essential workers that we realize now are so important to us, we basically have had some success flattening the curve and slowing the spread of the virus. But we must remain vigilant. And so the City of Ottawa is now cautiously reopening and resuming some programs. Some of those, as we know, are transit, with transit kind of going back into a stronger mode. However, obviously masks are required. Recreation and childcare services to support residents returning to work and to provide some relief during the warm summer months. And social services will reopen to support our most vulnerable. Counter services will also start to resume, but by appointment. It's important to note that our governments are working together. So one of the things that we do pride ourselves as elected officials are that we have been meeting weekly. And I think that Tim Turney had noted that last week was the 13th week. And what is very important in this scenario is that many of constituent concerns that we hear, residents' concerns, we talk about when we meet and we seek action. So we're going to continue on that vein. And I'm very gratified to be here. And I'm gratified that as a city, with all elected officials, I feel that we've made great progress during this pandemic. The one thing, if you allow me to really just acknowledge, is the work of the community associations. I emphasized this at the last town hall. The work that the community associations have done with volunteering has been stellar, and I think that we need to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralston. All right, so in the interest of trying to get through, I have at least now 15 or 16 questions that we have had from before. I'm going to try and limit the answers to 1 minute per person. And you can, if there's more discussion required, we can come back with a follow-up question or a follow-up answer, but I'd like to try and move through as many of the questions as possible. So just be brief and let's open the discussion, all right? So is everybody okay with that? Mona, Lucille, okay, Ralston? All right, and some of the questions are addressed to one or all of you or two of you, depending on what they're about. Alors, on va juste garder ça, on va essayer de garder nos questions, les réponses à 1 minute pour être capable de répondre à autant de questions que possible. Alors, s'il vous plaît, mettez vos questions dans le chat sur le côté de votre écran. Si vous regardez, vous allez être capable de voir le icône pour ouvrir cette boîte-là. OK, première question. And this is to all three of you, is what steps are you taking to address poverty levels in our riding and our area? So we'll start with Mona, and we'll do 1 minute, please.
Thank you. And thank you for that very important question. Just so you know, since we've been elected in 2015 and re-elected in 2018, I can tell you that over 1 million Canadians were lifted out of poverty. And that's including 334,000 children and 73,000 seniors across the country. And that's because we brought forward the Canada Child Benefit. We cut taxes for middle class, and we also raised 1% for we raised taxes for the top 1%. So those are actions that we took, and I can tell you that we will be continuing to do that. In July, there's going to be an increase for the Canada Child Benefit, so more families will receive more money to be able to support their families. And because I just have a minute, I know that I've been working also with Ralston and the community to see how on the federal front we can support the poverty strategy in Ottawa-Vanier. And we are ready, I'm ready to continue to see how the federal government can provide support either through programming or through other tax breaks if and when we get there. And at some point, rapidement, at some point with the COVID, I'll explain what we've done maybe later on with another question.
Yes, there'll be COVID questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Alors, Lucille, s'il te plaît.
Oui, merci Nathalie. Alors, très rapidement, the question was asked in English, right? Yeah. Okay. So,
en français.
yeah, well, I want to make sure that the person who has the question can understand the answer as well. So, we know that's a real problem. It's an ongoing problem, and with the COVID crisis, it's actually emphasized the need to really address those needs. With my colleagues at the other elected levels, we're working on a task force, which is to be announced shortly, on which principle this is going to be laid out, but we're taking positive actions to trying to address this. Of course, the focus will be housing and affordable housing, for the various people that need it. And also for me, it's a big an advocacy towards the government to reinstate some of the programs that were cut that were supposed to be, or that were helping, the more vulnerable people in our communities. And so we're using certainly the crisis as a leverage to say, look at what that's done. You need to bring back funding. So I'll continue on that front. I'm sure there'll be other aspects of the question.
Ralston.
Thank you. So the city does not have a poverty reduction strategy. It has not had one in 10 years. Within the next 3 months, so probably on the cusp of the fall, my office will release a proposal that will call for the reintroduction of a poverty reduction strategy at the City of Ottawa. It's going to be very important for us to look at coordination of resources and also advocacy for more resources. And we're doing that in conjunction with the community. So, my office, when I first took office, established a ward council of community associations. We sat down with the community associations, and they've actually contributed a good amount of content to the proposal that we will be developing. And we are also consulting with many community associations with a special focus on food security and resiliency. So our plan is to bring a proposal to Community and Protective Services Committee at the City of Ottawa to say that we need to really have a substantive plan so that the city can go forward. Because without a plan, we really do not have a roadmap to go forward.
Thank you, Ralston. The next question I think has been answered actually by the government, and it was when can we expect to gather with more than 5 people? So I think the provincial government made an answer on that one this week. And Mary Hickman also had a question, will the emergency relief fund be extended past the end of August? And I think Mona can confirm that yes, it will be.
Oh, no, I can't confirm that. Yes, it will be at this time. I can confirm, though, that the wage subsidy is going to continue till the end of August. The Prime Minister did today mention that we're looking at extending the CERB. So that's the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the $2,000 per month. We're trying to find the best way to support Canadians at this time. So we should have good news soon, but I can tell you at this time that we're looking at what else we will need to do to continue to support families and people that are in vulnerable situation. Just for your information, seniors will get their GIS and OIS increase in the week of July 6th. So a lot of seniors have been calling our office to find out when, and the week of July 6th will be when they will get the top up of up to $600, depending on your OIS or GIS.
All right, thank you. The next question comes from Jürgen Hoth. And it's, I think it's maybe answerable by all 3 of you, but I'll start with Ralston. How come a pack of 10,000 people was allowed to gather for the Black Lives Matter march in Ottawa? Was 4,000, while we weren't allowed to have assemblies of more than 10 people due to COVID? How do you resolve that?
Well, we were at an inflection point. I mean, if you're watching your TV, you would realize that there's major challenges around civil rights in both countries. And so I think that this was an expression of people's frustrations. Our public health agency actually addressed this through a statement, Dr. Vera Etches, and noted very clearly that racism is also a public health issue and a very serious one. So much so that we were having discussions about the establishment of the Anti-Racism Secretariat before these disturbances, public disturbances that we saw in the United States, where actually, to be quite candid, I told the mayor when he was asking about the creation of an anti-racism policy unit at the city, that we need one because I haven't seen this much discord, rancor, and frustration in the community since the 1990s. When there was actually a riot on Yonge Street in Toronto. So we have major challenges around criminal justice, around other issues. The decision was made that there was going to be a tremendous number of people who would gather, and as a result, the public health agency actually provided a tremendous amount of advice to the crowd, ensuring that there were a lot of people who did use masks and people who would self-isolate after. But the reality is we were balancing the idea of people expressing their civil liberties and their rights and health. And I think that we tried to strike that balance because regardless of what decision we make, there is a democratic right to protest, and people would exercise that right.
Thanks, Ralston. Okay, good answer. Lucille, as-tu quelque chose à ajouter? Do you have anything to add, Lucille?
Just briefly, because I think, the anti-racism crisis was in parallel with the COVID, and, Center of Disease Control actually recognized the fact that racism has taken more lives than COVID. So I think there was great justification here. We need to stand up for this. It's a very, very important crisis and issue. And I did take part in the march, and there were very clear instructions from the health department, and I had a mask and I observed physical distancing, and I just think it was just as important as standing up for COVID.
All right, merci. Mona, as-tu quelque chose à ajouter à ça?
Je vais juste faire un écho à Ralston et Lucille. Je pense que c'est un moment historique, mais aussi un moment où c'est clair qu'il faut qu'on passe à l'action. Moi aussi, j'ai été présente, j'ai pris les mesures nécessaires qui nous avaient été suggérées par la santé publique. Et puis, il fallait vraiment être membre, être présent pour s'assurer de soutenir nos communautés, puis démontrer qu'il faut passer à l'action. Donc, j'écho mes collègues.
D'accord, je te remercie. All right, the next question is got my little timer going. From John Forsey, what actions are you advocating to reduce carbon emissions? So I'm going to start with Mona on this one.
Merci. Thank you, John, for your very important question. I mean, our government has put a price on pollution. That's the first thing that we've done, and we will continue to do price on pollution. And other really important measures that are coming forward is, for example, the banning of single-use plastics by 2021. We are also going to increase our measures to make sure that we reduce and we be able to set our target at 2030 or reach our target, by 2030, and also measures to reach the one on 2050. I know I have just 1 minute, but this is something that I'm hoping our community really supports our program, our measures, and also I would love to hear what else we could be doing as not only Ottawa-Vanier community, but as a country to continue by reducing carbon emissions.
Merci. Lucille?
Oui, merci. So I did request to be the critic for environment because it's so important to me for many reasons, and I won't get into that. And I did get that. So I'm actually the Liberal critic for environment conservation and park. So of course, I'm not in government and I don't know what Ford will be willing to do, but I'm certainly very willing to advocate and be a very strong voice to make sure that he listens to us, and us being, all of us here in the riding. So I do invite you to reach out to my office and share your views, because bringing evidence to the government is actually the best way to fight and to make a strong ask and recommendation. So do reach out and let me know what you believe the provincial government should be doing. Thank you.
Merci, Lucille. Ralston?
Well, we made some substantive moves. It was great that the first actual vote that I could make after the by-election was to declare a climate emergency. From that, I had said in my election manifesto that we were committed to ensuring that climate change was really reflected in the official plan. That's why I was happy to second a motion just during the recent urban boundary expansion debate with my colleague Sean Manor to ensure that we undertake greenhouse gas analysis when we build out new subdivisions and new communities to see what the impact of that would be, and that was accepted. Right now, I am supporting a letter that is being written by Deputy Mayor Laura Dudas asking for infrastructure money for new projects, specifically that are involving active transportation. And we will be writing a letter, subsequent letter on top of that, really calling for specific infrastructure investments, whether they're on Beechwood or ensuring that we are really expanding connected cycling links within our neighborhoods. So these components are going to be important, as well as road renewals, ensuring that when we do road renewals, that we are looking at prioritizing active transportation. So those are key areas that we're going to focus on in terms of ensuring that we really address environmental concerns.
Sorry, I muted myself. All right, the next question is in the chat box, but we have had many questions about interprovincial transportation. So I'm going to ask this particular question because I think it's so well worded. 10 years ago, a coalition of community groups in East Ottawa, with the assistance of Marie Bélanger and Madeleine Meilleur, defeated the Harper government proposal for a bridge across the Ottawa River at Kettle Island. The current federal government has once again put on the table the prospect of a vehicle bridge. What do you think, Mona, Lucille, should be done about interprovincial transportation, and what actions do you take to support your view? And also keeping in mind that this COVID crisis has now perhaps completely changed what we need going forward from the perspective of interprovincial transport. On va commencer avec Mona.
Merci, Nathalie. Alors, en 1 minute, je suis vraiment désolée, mais je ne pourrai pas répondre. Donc, si tu peux me donner un petit peu plus de temps, j'apprécierais. I do want to say, everyone, just if we can maybe think of Moril today, it would be his birthday on June 15th. So sending good wishes to his family. I will tell you, I've been working on this file since I've been elected, and there's one thing I really want is to take the trucks out of King Edward. That is really important. We also need to make sure that we have the better strategy for regional transportation and also for transit. And that's why I've been advocating for us to have a regional strategy. Now, you probably have heard that there has been an update of the 2013 study, so updating the data. The report should be coming out soon. I have not seen the report yet, so I'm hopeful that we will get that soon. The other thing that is happening at this time, and I'm going to read it because it's a long study. There's currently, the NCC is doing the long-term integrated interprovincial crossings and sustainable transport strategy. So that study is being done and it should be completed by 2021. And this is where I believe that we all have to participate. And I've been advocating for in step 2 to have some public consultations to be able to contribute. And Nathalie, you raised it with the new realities that we have now following COVID. We know that most probably there will be a lot of more people working from home. The changes in the transportation and transit needs to be updated. So I'm hopeful that we don't move forward with a piecemeal approach, but better have a regional updated strategy, especially on transit, and also better understand what the needs are for interprovincial crossings. So I will tell you that I really hope that we can get that study and then make sure that we respond to the needs of our community.
So I'm just going to interrupt here for a second and ask you a follow-up question to that before I get to Lucille. Are those criteria for the study public, and can we have access to see what is the NCC actually studying?
I will get back to you on that. I know that I have some information and a meeting coming up with the NCC to make sure that we have a possibility for a community to participate to this study.
All right, thank you. So Lucille?
Yeah, so briefly, I strongly believe from the beginning that any move towards, that change needs to be focused on 2 things. One is, of course, getting the trucks off downtown. That has to be an absolute priority. And second, it has to be focused on efficient, green, and sustainable transportation. So whatever solution we come up has to take this into account very strongly, I believe. And also, of course, because of the new reality, we're going to have to take into account the consequences of COVID and how it affects work habits in terms of need for transportation. So we may have to scale down our expectation or need to take that into account. So like Mona said, I don't think we should, go ahead with a piecemeal approach and, take the time now to evaluate the whole consequence. And, we'll find out in the next few months how this is going to unfold and be cognizant of that and, bring solutions that will focus on what the community needs.
Merci. Thank you very much. Ralston, did you have anything quickly to add to that?
Well, I'll just be very clear. I've been pretty unambiguous about this. I don't really support a crossing. I think that obviously there should be studies done about crossing options to relieve King Edward. When I was president of the Overbrook Community Association, we gave some comments about the potential for a tunnel project and the EA around that. But the reality for me is that the current council and the current mayor has been pretty clear, along with the mayor of Gatineau, that their preference is for more rapid transit in the region, and that is where my priorities lay as well, for more rapid transit in our region versus a vehicle-based crossing or bridge within our community. So I've just been very clear on that, and I just would reaffirm that that's my position.
Perfect. Thank you, Ralston, very much. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about healthcare. And I have a few questions that have been grouped together. Judy Sorensen asked, I'm concerned about physician compensation in the province and the fact that some medical clinics have had to close. What action is being taken to ensure that physicians can continue to provide a range of medical services to their patients in the community? And I'm going to ask that to Lucille.
Yeah, sure. So of course, this also has affected deeply, our whole healthcare system, and we've seen doctors, unfortunately, having to close their clinics because they didn't have sufficient financial support. So I think that financial support has to be part of the solution, just like in other sectors. So I've had doctors calling me saying, I'd like to be able to practice, but it's just not possible because I don't have the money to keep my clinic open and whatnot. So we need to look at that. And I think, we need to talk to those doctors and see if we can develop like an alternative models where, we would have more community oriented healthcare services and stir away from the hospital and try to have community health centers. And I know that there's already, some models on the table and that the provincial government is sort of looking at that. But I think that we need to, talk to these doctors and see how we can bring a new model. I think we'll have to do that in light of the crisis and what it's brought into light.
Thank you for that. And a follow-up question regarding healthcare, and it's about It's about long-term care facilities and the fact that so many of them are privately owned. And so with question or answer from Mona and from Lucille on this, what steps can you take to improve the situation where we're going to have safer long-term care facilities for our seniors? Also spot inspections without necessarily making appointments so that everybody can make them look great. So asking really why for profit. Alors, on commence avec Lucille et ensuite Mona.
Yeah, the why for profit, I don't really understand. I don't know where it started from. I don't have the history. I just see that what we've seen during the crisis, that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They seems to be more vulnerable than the publicly funded long-term care. So I think we have to look at the model. And I did call the provincial government for a full independent inquiry on the long-term care issue. It's really important. We need to find out what happened, why, and where, and in order to be able to address that. I think that what the Canadian Armed Force report has brought forward is very disturbing. And I think we have to address that really head on, and let's not be naive. What they've reported in a few of those long-term care homes is not isolated case. So we really need to bring that kind of inspection, I think is very important. And that's already something that I've asked. So I'll continue to work on developing this. There's some legislation right now going through Queen's Park, and we're really asking hard questions, so to be followed up.
Merci, Lucille. Mona?
Merci, Nathalie. Thank you, Nathalie. Of course, this is a really very concerning for me. I know that on our weekly calls, we've had conversations, Ralston, Lucille, and I. And as for what I am concerned about is, do we have national guidelines that could really reinforce how we take care of our seniors, especially in long-term care and in residences? So I'm trying to work and see how the federal government can contribute to finding those solutions. It is a systematic problem, and we need to fix it. Now, we know most of the regulations are under the provincial government, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that we take care of our seniors. So I will be working closely with my colleagues at the cabinet table to find those solutions, and hopefully we can maybe provide some national guidelines in the future. That's one action that I believe we should be taking.
Thank you, Mona. The next question is for Ralston, and it's from Isabella. She lives at the Mario Di Giovanni Co-op on Saint Laurent, and recently one of the co-op members passed away from COVID-19. The residents of the building were not notified about this COVID case, even though there are many common areas where the ill member could have come into contact with other residents. The co-op management said that it's up to Ottawa Public Health to contact the residents in the building. I think that each time there is a known case in an apartment building, it should be made known to all the residents of that building to keep everybody safe. What is your position on that, and can this be rectified?
So one of the key things is that it's obviously understandable that people will be concerned, and that there is definitely infections throughout the community. And everybody has to be vigorous. So that's why our public health agencies have been talking about the sanitation and the hygiene standards that we have to uphold in order to ensure that we're always safe. We always have to follow that no matter what, because the reality is that the virus is in the community. So in other words, our behavior should not change regardless of whether there's an active case within our community or within our building. But the co-op management is right that OPH does contact people, but they contact people, and this is the approach that they take, that are in close contact, which is defined as people who have been directly involved with an infected individual, and then they undertake contacting and tracing of those people to see the vector of exposure. Now, close contact is defined as a person who lives with a case of COVID-19, or a person who is providing care for those cases, including family members or other caregivers, for up to 2 days before the case of COVID was really reporting sickness. A person who's had similar type of contact for a certain amount of time. So there is a vector in terms of the people who are contacted. So in that type of scenario, OPH has not given recommendations to contact everybody. They want everybody obviously to follow the safest procedures in their buildings, and to ensure that people are washing, keeping their hands clean, and following hygiene. But they do really contact people with close contacts as a rule in terms of the way that they operate.
Okay, thanks. So we're kind of getting close to the end, so I just want to get through as many more questions as possible.
Natalie, may I just say that whatever questions we didn't get a chance to answer, we will send a response at the end, well, this week sometime, to make sure that we do answer your questions, because they're very important.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to mention that.
All right, so the next question is a bit of a yin and yang question, because there are two people asking the same question but from different perspectives, and it's regarding the opening of Hemlock at Saint Laurent to give access to the residents of Wateridge Village access onto Hemlock. So obviously the residents of Waterridge would like that, and the rest of the community not so much. I'm going to start with Ralston, because that's probably a city question, and then we'll go from there. Ralston,
Sure.
1 minute.
Well, the plan, according to Canada Lands Corporation, and this has always been on the books, is to ultimately open that road. Is that going to happen immediately? No. In fact, it will probably be a number of years before it is opened. And that's because of the way that CLC is opting to design a Waterridge village. There's a water waste management that needs to be done before some of the lots are sold and developed. And there had been a delay, and as a result, we might be looking at a 2 to 3 year timeline before that road would be opened. In the interim, of course, it is not my expectation or my desire to see 10,000 eventual residents getting into their cars and going across Hemlock and Beechwood. So in the interim, what we are doing is we are working with OC Transpo, and we are also examining through the Montreal Road Transit EA scenarios to ensure that when the time comes, when there's a critical mass of people in Waterridge Village, that there will be essential and efficient transit so that people can feed into our new LRT network and also feed into an efficient bus network. So that's what we're going to try and do in the interim. We're going to try and ensure that there are the transit options that people can then opt to use rather than the road options.
All right, thanks, Ralston. The next question is on education. With education to look very different this fall and likely in the coming years, what are you doing to influence Ottawa's largest school board, the OCDSB, to better use their existing schools in our community, provide equitable service to all parts of it, and also to reduce overcrowding in certain schools? And I'm going to start with Ralston and then go to Lucille on this. Mona, you could chime in possibly, but not necessarily. So Ralston, go ahead.
So we started to expand the conversation at the city, and effectively we're actually doing that in the ward through a program called Building Better Revitalized Neighborhoods that is targeted to see socioeconomic improvements in both the Overbrook neighborhood and in the Vanier neighborhood, which we share with Councillor Fleury. So there has been an acknowledgement that we need better public access to some of the spaces in our public schools, and that there's a benefit to that access, especially to the green space, that often is hard for different community groups to access. So we've acknowledged that, and we are working through the BBRN process to really identify some schools within our ward, not specifically in Manor Park, because that's not the scope of BBRN, but this is an experiment in a sense to see how we can really engage in a more coordinated way with the school board around public access to some of the amenities outside of school hours.
Okay, thank you, Ralston. Lucille?
Well, just briefly, really, because I'm kind of new to the discussion, being just newly elected. Of course, I was aware of the issue because I live in the community, and I was a school trustee before in a French public school board. So I understand the issue. I think that we are going to some level of change in terms of education, and that the need for space may not be the same in the future, and we may want to take that into account into our discussions forward. I would like to be able to create some kind of forum of discussions, because I think it's very important that the board, is open to speaking with the community to really understand the need. I think that only through communication, we can come to some resolution. So I would like to encourage that kind of dialogue. And having been, of course, again, a school trustee myself, I know that there are ways to make them see the benefit of, having a community collaboration. And I don't know why it hasn't happened thus far, but certainly willing to put my effort towards that.
Thanks, Lucille. Okay, one question. We would like to know what the developers have in mind for the redevelopment of Manor Park Estates housing complex bordering Saint-Laurent and Hemlock. Do you know anything about that, Ralston?
Well, I know that there is a pre-consultation, so nothing has actually been submitted officially to the city or to my office. When that does happen, obviously, we would want to ensure, and if that does happen, because that's conjecture, but if that does happen, we are committed to greater public consultation. And that's across the board for all development. Let me just be very clear. I opposed our urban boundary expansion with the expectation that there would be intensification potentially within our neighborhoods, within Ward 13. But the key thing is a lot of the opportunities for that development can be master planned. And that's very important. And as an example, I gave a direction last year for a public consultation process that will begin at some point this year around the baseball stadium, because that's a tremendous amount of land. Same thing in Overbrook, where a lot of land is coming, or a lot of buildings or properties are at end of life. So I think the key thing is to ensure that there's proper public consultation, and also that we have the benefit of scenarios that are more master planned than ad hoc infill development.
Thanks, Ralston. One last question en français. Comment combattre le racisme dans le service public lorsqu'on peut le voir, le racisme en temps et tel, mais on le subit directement? So, je vais commencer avec Mona, ensuite Lucille. And for Ralston, it's a question on racism in the public service. So you could maybe chime in on that at the end. So very briefly, because we're coming to the end of our meeting, please. Mona,
oui, c'est vraiment une question tellement importante. Puis, premièrement, il faut reconnaître qu'il y a du racisme systémique, non seulement dans la fonction publique, mais à travers le pays. Et je pense qu'on a entendu haut et fort le fait qu'il faut qu'on passe à l'action. On ne parle pas juste de conversations courageuses maintenant, on parle vraiment d'actions courageuses et de travailler avec non seulement les membres de la communauté noire, mais aussi même avec les communautés autochtones. On a beaucoup de travail à faire. Donc, je vous dirais qu'à ce soir, je confirme qu'on travaille là-dessus, qu'on veut vraiment passer à l'action. Et justement, avec Ralston, au niveau local, je sais qu'il y a un mandat très important et on va l'appuyer là-dedans. Moi, c'est certain que je veux appuyer pour faire un changement dans notre communauté ici, chez nous, mais aussi dans la fonction publique. Je travaille avec Greg Fergus, qui a aussi mis beaucoup de suggestions de l'avant, puis on est en train d'étudier, voir comment on peut les mettre en œuvre. Donc, merci pour la question.
C'est beau, Nathalie, tu veux que j'y aille?
Oui, vas-y, pardon, merci.
OK, c'est beau, j'attendais ton clou. Alors, comme le dit Mona, c'est important premièrement de le reconnaître que ce problème-là existe. Alors, je pense que ça commence vraiment à être quelque chose qui est justement beaucoup plus public. Je pense également que si on veut faire quelque chose, ça passe par des changements législatifs puis du financement. Alors, des gestes vraiment concrets. Puis au niveau du financement, c'est beaucoup au niveau provincial, en tout cas, de rétablir certains programmes qui visaient justement à aider ces communautés-là qui ont été coupées par le gouvernement Ford puis qui ont eu un impact vraiment direct puis discriminatoire sur ces communautés-là. Alors, c'est très important, puis je vais parler très fort, en fait, pour que ce financement-là revienne. Puis, le dernier sujet que je veux aborder là-dessus, c'est également l'éducation. C'est tellement important, c'est par là que ça passe, c'est par là que ça commence, c'est là que tout se joue. Et les problèmes existent malheureusement également dans nos écoles, mais nos enfants, ils naissent pas racistes. Alors, il y a quelque chose à faire au niveau de l'éducation. Puis, je voudrais vraiment travailler plus cet aspect-là avec nos différents conseils scolaires. Merci.
D'accord, merci Lucille. Okay, Ralston, up to you.
Well, last week I was just appointed council liaison for anti-racism and ethnocultural relations. And one of the key components, we actually held one of our first meetings with the mayor and with city staff today, is going to be around employment opportunities for racialized people, Indigenous people, people of color, because it's absolutely important that there is equitable access to opportunities and equitable outcomes. And we know that that does not exist. That's not the case. The city had just recently released statistics that showed that in cases of racialized communities, there is 12% representation versus the 25 or 26% actual representation in terms of the community of racialized communities, and way lower representation amongst the senior manager ranks. So this has been identified for a long period of time by diverse communities. And with the establishment of the liaison position and also the anti-racism office at the city, we are intent on taking firm action and substantive action on that issue.
All right, super. Thank you, Ralston. So we're at the end of our allotted time, and I would ask maybe to have a show of hands. I'd like to ask the pollution question posed by Eugenie. So if you can stand another 5 minutes of our meeting, or actually probably 10 if we add in the goodbye messages from everybody. Can I have a show of hands who's willing to do 10 more minutes? Mona, are you able to do 10 more minutes?
I'd love to. I have another meeting starting in 5,
right.
so I'm kind of waited at the other, but I will answer that last question if we do it shortly, and maybe we can also do this again. I think that's a first virtual assembly, and we should continue to do this.
So are people in favor of listening to the one more answer question show of hands? Yeah, okay, all right. So quickly, everybody sees it in the chat bar on air pollution. Somebody's got a lot of sirens going in their background. Pollution's dropped an estimated 30 to 40% because of COVID. So what short and long-term measures can you advocate for to rapidly reduce our reliance on fossil fuels in Canada, Ontario, and Ottawa? So Mona, I'm gonna start with you, and we'll go to Lucille and then Ralston. So let's stick to a minute.
Thank you, and thank you for that very important question. I will tell you that our government has been very dedicated in reducing fossil emissions and fossil fuels, and carbon emissions and fossil fuels. With the price on pollution, that is something that really drives us to make sure that we transition to better economy and also less use of fossil fuels. I will continue to advocate to make sure that our next generations can also be able to not have this situation that we have right now. COVID has given us an opportunity to continue to focus on how we reduce our emissions, and we will continue to do that.
Merci Mona. Lucille?
C'est moi qui avais les sirènes, je m'étais mis sur mute. Alors, yeah, thank you. So I think, one of the important aspects, and it's been said before, but we need to diversify our sources of energy if we want to be able to move away from fossil fuels. So we need to invest in those other energy sources, whether it's windmill, whether it's solar panels, whether it's electric. I mean, we have to make an investment, and the government needs to understand that it's an investment that will pay off in the long term. I think that we also need to listen. We need to listen better to our communities, but we also need to involve our youth, because our youth are very concerned and they have really great ideas. We need to involve them in this solution. I think it's so important because it's their future we're dealing with. And I guess I won't be saying anymore, but of course, we need to continue to look at ways to make the government make the positive move that it needs to do.
And very briefly, obviously investing in active transportation, we're going to see a scenario here with a tremendous amount of investment potentially from governments after COVID in terms of stimulus. We're already positioning ourselves at the city to ensure that we are asking for greater amount of investment in active transportation infrastructure. We have to enhance green building technologies and see the wider deployment and more effective deployment. I sit on environment committee at the city, and I've been very active asking about questions around our own building performance. And after the city really deals with its own building performance, whether it's building, automated building technologies, we have to ensure that there are opportunities in new developments that are undertaken through the city that we are really utilizing sustainable building technologies, since the majority of the energy is consumed by our buildings, nearly 45%. And then the other key thing is pushing for more investments in rapid transportation, especially around electric buses. So we want to push to modernize our fleet so we can get away from dirtier diesel and move towards cleaner electric buses. So these are key things that I'll be pushing for in the months and years ahead.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to just wrap up the meeting now to say thank you so much to all of you who participated, to remind you that it's your community and that to run effectively and to do the good work that it does require a heck of a lot of volunteers, and we urge you to give some time, whether it's a few hours a month or more, to work on a committee, something you're passionate about. You can check out both the MPCC and the MPCA websites for their different committees and activities. But we need volunteers, of course, to make things work. Je vous remercie tout le monde d'avoir assisté à la réunion ce soir, et puis c'est très apprécié de la part de tout le monde, Mona, Lucille, Ralston. Thank you all so much for taking the time. I think it was a great evening, and all the questions will be answered in writing by the representatives. So we're going to just collate them. We've got some additional ones here, and we have the registration from everybody, so you'll all get the answers. Does anybody have anything final that they would like to add or say? Wow.
No, well, thank you. I always want to say thank you. And I also want to thank the community. I want to double down on what you said about volunteering. Our community would not get through COVID without the amazing volunteer efforts. The fact that, a food distribution network was established is incredible. All the work that we saw Chef Joe do in our community in terms of distributing food is incredible. The work of the resource center is incredible. And that is the strength of our community, the resilience of our community. And I'm really always acknowledging that. And it makes me proud to be elected representative for Rita Rockcliffe. So thank you so much to the community associations for the work that they do every day. Being volunteers, I understand it's amazing. And sometimes, there's a sacrifice to doing it, but it is much appreciated by the community.
Thank you, Ralston.
If I can, I just wanted to say thank you as well, and just add that if people are interested in maybe having some specific topic tables of discussion, maybe through the association, because I think you're doing a fabulous job at connecting people. I mean, I'd be more than willing to do that, and I'm sure my colleagues would do that too. So if something specific on the subject that we want to get together, we can actually do that as well. So thank you again.
Mona?
Oui, je vais rajouter même chose que mes collègues. Je pense que ce soir, ce fut vraiment une expérience que j'ai beaucoup appréciée. Ce que j'aimerais aussi avoir, c'est une conversation. Let's have a conversation also on different topics, and not just us answering questions, but maybe listening to what you think we should be working on, prioritizing. The COVID exercise have demonstrated how resilient our community is and how we work together, and we have to continue to work together. I've done some really great conversations across the country and in our community, and the ideas that I found and heard were the ones that I related back to different departments, and that's what we need to do, work together. So thank you very much, and hope to see you again during the summer, preferably in an event, but if not, virtually.
All right. That's it, everybody. Thank you all so much for taking the time to come out tonight.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll get to see each other in person soon.
Merci,
Cheers.
Natalie.
Merci.
Bye.
Mon plaisir.